All right, let's dive into a really fascinating topic. We're looking at a source that claims there's a secret economic war happening right now, under our noses, and the ultimate prize, it's gold. Let's get right into it. So, if you've been watching the markets at all recently, you've seen something pretty wild. The price of gold has been on an absolute tear, just smashing through records and hitting these incredible new highs. But then, almost out of nowhere, bam, it crashes. A massive stomach-turning drop that just vaporizes all those gains in an instant. It's this extreme whiplash effect that has so many investors totally confused. So what in the world is going on here? Is this just typical market craziness? Well, according to the source material we're breaking down today, this isn't random noise at all. It's the result of a deliberate, calculated fight. And that brings us to the first big idea from our source. This whole situation shouldn't be seen as a market fluctuation. It should be seen as a full-blown war over gold. The central argument is that the world's major powers have, well, they've taken the gloves off. A quiet, covert economic war is being waged, and the main battlefield is the market for precious metals. Now, the evidence the source points to is pretty wild. It talks about how silver prices first shot up, then crashed so hard that actual physical silver just disappeared from the markets. You couldn't get it. The source also argues that the amount of gold and silver being traded on paper is gigantic, way more than the physical metal that actually exists on the planet. This disconnect, it says, is a huge red flag for manipulation. Okay, so if this is a war, who's actually fighting? Let's take a look at how the source identifies the two main players in this clash of the titans. The source really breaks it down into two opposing teams. On one side, you have Team USA, which the source says is led by Donald Trump. Their goal is to keep the US dollar on top. And the strategy? Push gold prices down, because a low gold price makes the dollar look strong. But on the other side, you've got Team China, led by Xi Jinping, and they want the exact opposite, to weaken the dollar. Their strategy is simple. Just keep buying gold no matter what. So when the US supposedly engineered that recent price crash, what did China do? They jumped right in, bought everything up cheap, and sent the price soaring again. And this isn't just about abstract economic theories. The source really personalizes this whole thing, framing it as a direct power struggle, a test of wills between these two leaders who are personally steering these massive economic moves. And it's not just a two-player game. The source also brings in Russia, claiming that Vladimir Putin used a very similar playbook. By buying up huge amounts of gold, Russia was allegedly able to completely cancel out the financial damage from Western sanctions. They essentially used gold as an economic shield. Now, this economic war might be happening in the shadows, but the source warns it could be about to explode into a very real, very hot conflict. Which brings us to Section 3, the Iran flashpoint. The source material paints a very tense picture here. It suggests a new military conflict is basically right around the corner, with Iran at the very center of it. And here's why that is so incredibly important. A war with Iran can mean a shutdown of the Strait of Hormuz, that tiny, narrow waterway where a massive chunk of the entire world's oil supply has to pass through. And if that choke point gets closed, the consequences would be catastrophic. According to the source, it could trigger a complete and total crash of the world economy. Just to put a number on it, the source predicts oil prices could shoot up to $200 a barrel. Can you imagine? For a country like the United States, that would mean absolutely crippling hyperinflation and economic chaos. Exactly the kind of thing that would destroy all confidence in the dollar. So why would this happen? Well, the source alleges that China is strategically propping up Iran, giving them technology and support. The supposed goal? To bait the US into a long, expensive, draining war. From China's perspective, this would be the ultimate checkmate. A US war with Iran would likely collapse the dollar, and investors would flee to the safety of gold, sending its price to the moon. So, with these giant geopolitical forces clashing, how does any of this affect you or me, the average person? Let's move on and see how the source lays out what it calls the investor's playbook. The source describes this predictable cycle, and for a lot of people, it's a painful one. Here's how it goes. First, the market crashes. Small investors panic and sell everything to stop the bleeding. But the big institutional investors, they see a fire sale. They swoop in and buy up everything for pennies on the dollar. Then, when the market recovers and prices hit a new peak, that's when the FOMO, the fear of missing out, kicks in for everybody else. They all rush back in, buying at the very top. And that is the exact moment the big players sell, taking huge profits and leaving the small investors holding the bag. And why would everyone rush to gold in a crisis like this? It all comes down to one core concept: gold as a safe haven. When everything else seems like it's on fire, stocks, currencies, you name it, gold is seen as this timeless, stable thing that will hold its value. In a scenario like the Iran conflict, we're talking billions, maybe even trillions of dollars all trying to cram into the safety of gold. This all sounds incredibly dangerous. So is there any way to stop it? Our final section looks at the source's answer to that very question. Is this collision inevitable? Well, according to the source, the pressure is getting pretty intense. It claims that Donald Trump sees this whole thing spiraling out of control and has actually reached out to China to try and de-escalate, proposing talks to call a truce in this economic war. But, and this is a big but, the source's conclusion is really pessimistic. It basically argues that things have already gone too far, that the forces at play are just too powerful to be stopped with a conversation. It portrays this coming economic destruction as basically inevitable, with regular people like us just caught in the middle of a global power game with no idea when to buy or sell or what to do next.
And that really leaves us with the huge central question that this material forces us to ask. In a world where currencies and markets can be turned into weapons, what does financial safety even look like anymore? And where on earth can it actually be found? That's what we wanted to explore in this explainer.